from Kitch Chatter Speech Pathology, and I'm here with Sue, who is an audiologist from Selective Hearing, and she will be joining our practice on Tuesdays, and she's here to do audiology assessments, so that's your hearing assessments with the kids. So Sue, how long have you actually been an audiologist for?
Yeah, I've been an audiologist for 20 years this year, and it's been a great career. I've really enjoyed it, and I've worked in a variety of settings. I've done a lot of paediatric work in the past, and adults too, but specifically with paediatrics I've worked in big tertiary hospitals. I've worked in private practice and also for Australian Hearing, which I was a paediatric specialist for them for a number of years. Yeah.
And so working with kids, is that quite a specialised area versus the adult hearing tests then?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really specialised area. You've got to enjoy working with children. It's really important to engage with children, make the assessments fun, whilst you're trying to get a lot of information from them. So I think it's a very specialised area. We tailor traditional audiological assessment for kids, so the games and the activities we do are specifically for children. So it's quite a unique process.
Why is it important to have your hearing checked?
Yeah, hearing is such an important thing to check in everyone, but particularly children, because it has such a big impact on their overall well-being. You know, if you're not hearing well, you're not going to develop speech and language appropriately and accurately. Your sounds won't be clear and other people won't understand what you're saying. It's really frustrating. If you're not hearing well, you'll have difficulty in the classroom, you'll become frustrated and isolated. If you're not hearing well, it's hard to connect with people. It's hard to develop friendships and maintain friendships with your peers, with your family, and yeah, it's really important to have checked.
It sounds very important, particularly for the children that we have seen coming through our clinic, that we always try and encourage to get the hearing checked. So tell the parents out there, what are some of the signs that they might be able to recognise in their child, perhaps at home or even in the classroom, that the teacher might have noticed? So what are some of the signs that might indicate that there might actually be a hearing problem that needs investigating?
Sure. At home, parents might notice that their children, their speech seems to be off. You know, they're not speaking clearly, they're not repeating words clearly, maybe they're mishearing what their parents are saying to them, and so they're not following instructions clearly. Often parents I see will say, oh, my child's behaviour is off. You know, they're not following instruction clearly, and that's something that teachers talk about, you know, in the classroom, is that children who aren't hearing well, they can't follow instruction as clearly. They tend to follow the other children in the class, and because they have to look at, you know, they're looking for visual information from other children about what to do. You know, TV's allowed at home. Children speak in a really loud voice. That's often a really good indicator that, you know, it's important to have the child's hearing tested.
Yeah. So it sounds very much like some of the kids that we see here who might have difficulties with their language development because they have trouble, you know, following instructions. So we need to work out, well, is it purely that it might be an actual language problem, which is obviously what the speech pathologist looks at, or is it that there's an underlying hearing problem that needs to be fixed first? So it's very important, I think, to at the very least get both areas checked, because we can work on the language as a speech pathologist, but if the hearing is the problem and it's not sorted, then no matter what we do in therapy as a speechy, obviously the hearing itself is ultimately the problem. So it sounds like it's a really important thing to have checked.
Yeah, so, and it's actually a really easy thing to do for parents to take their kids along and have a hearing assessment. You know, generally it takes 30 minutes. The kids have fun. It's not invasive at all, and you know, at the end of the 30 minutes, you'll have an answer. You'll know what's happening with your child's hearing, which is terrific. So it's a really easy thing to tick off the list if you're unsure about how your child's developing.
That's really good to hear. And so then if you are doing an assessment with a child and you find that there is a problem with the hearing, what would be the next step after that?
Yeah, well, it depends what the problem is. Oftentimes with kids we see a lot of fluid in the middle ear, and you might have heard the term glue ear. So that's children who aren't in any pain at all, but there's fluid in the middle ear. It's not infected, but it's causing them to not hear well, and that definitely needs some attention. So my next step would be to write to your GP, and then the GP would, depending on how serious the situation is, would refer on to an ear, nose and throat specialist for further investigation.
And because I know that that's often one of those things that when a child does have an ear infection, I know my own kids have had them, you know that they're in pain. Depending on their age, they can probably tell you it's the ears that are hurting. But that glue ear, or the fluid in the ear, that's obviously really, really hard to pick up on from a parent's perspective, because the child isn't in pain. So you have to look at those other behaviours where there's obviously having trouble hearing as to maybe that is the cause. So it's not just that when a child has an infection that it's a problem, it could be one of those other ones that are sort of slipping through and people are not necessarily realising.
Absolutely, I see a lot of that. Parents come in and they're just not quite sure, something just doesn't seem quite right. And we find that there's fluid in the middle ear, and that's causing them to have what we call a conductive or a non-permanent hearing loss. So it's something that we can easily treat, which is great.
And is that the one that's typically treated by having grommets inserted?
Yeah, it can be, or sometimes children will just grow out of it, so we monitor it closely. But yeah, often grommets are inserted.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the first step to go through, so there are other options.
Yeah, not at all. You'd want to have a 3-month period where you're seeing persistent glue ear before you'd refer on to an ear, nose and throat. Yeah, so that's the last sort of step, but it's day surgery. It's a really simple process, and it makes an enormous difference in the child's hearing ability.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that in kids who've had the grommets inserted, and their speech and language just improves so much in such a short time already.
Absolutely, you'll get so much more out of the speech and language assessment if you know that your child's hearing well. That just makes sense to do it beforehand.
Exactly. And so from what's the youngest age that you will be able to actually see a child for a hearing test?
Here at Kids Chatter Speech Pathology, we're seeing children 3 years and above. So you can easily book in at reception.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that explains everything in terms of the hearing. So it's really, really important to get your child's hearing checked, whether or not you have concerns, but definitely if you do have concerns, it's worth getting it checked. Sometimes it can be a really simple fix, or at the very least you know that is not necessarily the underlying problem and maybe something else is going on. So Sue will be here on Tuesdays at our clinic, so have a chat to us at reception if you wanted to book in an appointment. We'll pop all the details into the description of the post, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop your questions in the comments below and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Terrific, thank you.
Thanks, Sue.